Welcome to day 4, understanding how to create databases and tables on Databricks platform. Up until now, what we have seen is like databases are equivalent to an Excel sheet where each tab can represent a table, and then each in let's say a particular tab there are rows and columns. Those can be considered to be an equivalent to table rows and columns. So this is just an equivalent way of understanding how databases function. This is where the things get real. How data types give structure. Up until now, we have been talking about databases in theory, how they are like equivalent to Excel sheet, why SQL matters, and how data types give structures. But today, we are going to move to our first real act of building. We are trying to build a database and we are going to design tables. This is where the things get real. We'll try to create a database. What is database? We always considered it to be an equivalent to an Excel sheet, and then tables are something like an Excel sheet have different tabs. So tables can be considered equivalent to the tabs, and then in each of the tab you have something like rows and columns. Those can be considered as rows and columns in the table. So always picturize, whenever you picturize a database in mind, always picturize an Excel. For a data engineer, the process of building databases and tables is extremely important. It is a very critical as laying foundation for the building. It is like laying the foundation of the building. If your database design and structure is not correct, then eventually the kind of insights that you will generate will not correct, right? Get it wrong and the cracks will appear later in your pipelines, dashboards, and business decisions. Like at each and every point, we have experienced that if some database design gets goofed up, some fields are not present, so the data is not stored, and finally, what in the right format maybe sometimes, and then what we get is like, okay, there is no data, there is no data. Therefore, insights are poor. Therefore, dashboard is not giving the right kind of a display or result. So this is a very important step. Uh, so as usual, Databricks follows something called three-level namespace. In three-level namespace, there are three things that uh, you need to make sure that you understand. The first is in the first thing in three-level namespace is catalog, then schema, and then tables or views. So this is kind of a three-level namespace. First level is you define catalog, and then you define schema, and then you define tables. Let me quickly show you how you can define a catalog. I'm just opening a new tab and let's go here. Here you can define the catalog, schema, and tables. So this is a screen, uh, a representation of what all catalogs are present in my particular workspace. What I can do is let me quickly add create catalog. You can put like test catalog demo, and type can be standard. You can use different storage. You can choose the storage from here, but since this is a free workspace, therefore we have to choose whatever is available as a default storage. Once the test catalog is created, it will be displayed in front of us. We can click on configure catalog. We can define like what all workspaces should have access, and then what we can simply do is we can we can give access to all account users, and then let's just put a key test catalog demo, create a key, and we'll put test catalog demo. It is a best practice to give like tags. It helps you to check the cost and other stuff related. It's a best practice, so definitely try to follow that. Once the catalog is ready, we have received the message that catalog is created. Now inside the catalog, you can create a schema. There is always a default schema present, but you can add a schema. You can create a schema, something called test schema. You can put external location, but uh, since this is a limited workspace, so such options are not available. But you can add your AWS or ADLS location as an external location, and that will appear in the drop down. Once the schema is created, what you can create is you can create volume, you can create table, you can create model, you can create metric view. Metric view is a new feature that is being available recently, and that is related to like semantic layer of applications. We are going to have a separate video. I'm also trying to study what all features are available as a metric view. Maybe once I understand that, I'll create a dedicated view for it. Okay. But quickly let me show something which I have already created. So this is a schema I created for demoing all my project, the data engineering, and within that I have, let's say, created this uh, I have created a catalog called the data engineering, and within that I have a schema called company, and inside a schema I have these different tables. So let's check any of the tables, and you should be able to see like in description what this table is all about, and then what all columns are present. Like it has department ID, department name, location, and who is the owner of the table. It's a managed table, and since it's a managed table, the default location or the data that will be stored is going to be the default location only. And then since this table is completely managed by Databricks, so if I delete the table, the data will also be deleted along with that. It's a delta table. You can see the symbol show that it's a delta table that has been created. You can even click on it and see the sample data. There might be some sample data already because I keep on experimenting on this table. So let's check if there is a sample data. In your Databricks free edition, there is a small serverless warehouse, a SQL serverless warehouse. It is just getting started. So let's see, and you should be able to see the sample data as well here. Yeah, I can see like almost 5 rows are there. So this is all about creating table. What we can do is whatever process that we followed, we can follow it through the command line as well. So we can use like command for create catalog if not exist, create schema if not exist, and then within catalog you can add a table as well. So these are the commands to create catalog. Let's just simply run if not exist. So it should simply won't create anything. So you can use your serverless compute and you can run these commands on top of it. Now, what we are going to learn in this particular video is designing tables more than columns, right? Like we need to design table. So when we design a table, we don't just say here are the columns. We also define the rules that enforce an order into the table. Okay. So what are the rules? Like what kind of data belongs to each column? the data types that are going to be present, like what kind of data, whether your data is going to be, whether your column is going to be a string column, or whether your column is going to be a date column, or whether your column is going to be uh, 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 an integer column. So all those things can be defined as a enforced rule for the database. Then which row or which column identifies each row uniquely, which columns should never be duplicated. So these type of things we definitely start putting it together when we are designing the table. These rules protect us from chaos. They make sure that no two employees accidentally get the same ID, no two departments share the same name, and every employee records remain valid. So this is very important. Designing of a table is extremely critical. One of the point that we are going to learn today is a primary key. Okay, what is primary key of a database? Primary key of a table. Primary key of a table is a column which has unique values. There is no repetition of values. It can never be empty, it can never be null, and it guarantees that each row in a table can be identified with that. So these are like three properties of primary key. One is it must be unique, non-empty, non-null. Second, and third is guarantees that each row is identified with it. So that's the definition of a primary key. In our particular schema, employee ID column is the primary key. One of the most important thing is, like when you are working on databases like SQL Server or some of the other databases like MySQL, you can have an enforcement of a primary key. But for Databricks Delta Lake, you can't have enforcement of primary key. Recently, I think just 1 or 2 years back only, Databricks, or maybe 3 4 years back, Databricks started defining the primary key, but then it clearly states that you can define a primary key foreign key relation, but we are not going to enforce it. So if you try to insert the duplicate key also, it is going to get itself inserted. If it's a Lakehouse, Databricks Lakehouse, it will get inserted even though that column is defined as a primary key. It won't maintain that unique enforcement. Whereas if you try to do similar thing in, let's say MySQL or SQL Server, you will immediately get an error and transaction would fail, but not in case of a Lakehouse. Okay, so just this is just an FIA, because in Databricks free edition, whatever is available is Delta Lake, and Delta Lake is a lake house, and therefore lake house doesn't enforce primary key. I have put it as a concept because every database engineer who is trying to learn the database should understand the primary key, because many times we keep on saying this word primary key, primary key, primary key, and therefore I'm covering this concept. But as I just wanted to make it clear that as a delta lake, there is no enforcement of a primary key. Okay, now simply what we can do is we can click on create table if not exist. So you can see that within create table, what I have done is I have like defined different columns. So employee ID, which is going to be begin, first name which is going to be string, last name is going to be string, age is going to be begin, gender, salary, department ID, everything has their own particular data type. Hire date is date, and there is a constraint which I have put like a primary key, which we can define but not enforcement. I just ran, so a table must be created. I have already ran it, so table must already be there. And since we have put like create table if not exist, so therefore they exist after, since the table already exists. It must not be, this command might not have run since I already ran. But if you run this command, you should be able to see a table getting created. You can run a command called show create table, and if you run this command, you should be able to see the definition of a table employee test. And then what we would do is we would simply let me run one command and try to empty the table so that the new rows will be inserted. I always make it a practice that I give fully qualified name. Let's do a simple thing that let's try to rerun this command as well then. Let's run this. This is going to drop the table and then it is going to recreate the table. As simple as that. Now the command has ran successfully. Now what we'll simply do is we'll insert few rows into the table. Okay, so rows are inserted into the table. Yeah, you can see that rows are inserted. Let us check how many rows are inserted and we can see the data. So you should be able to see all the inserted rows. And so I deliberately put another row with id1 to showcase that even though we have put like primary key definition, it won't honor that primary key definition since it's a delta lake. Why this matter for data engineer? It's tempting to think that creating table is just a boilerplate, but this step determines how trustworthy your data will be as it flows through multiple systems. A pipeline is only as good quality as its data, and AI is as good quality as its data, and therefore your table is very critical and design is important. Without primary key, you can risk duplicate or missing records. Without uniqueness rule, you risk data that doesn't make sense. Without all these rules, it is very difficult to manage. And how you manage this for primary key and foreign key? So this kind of relation we maintain it when we are doing an ETL processing. We do it or we manage that relation within Spark. So that I'll cover in later part, but uh, it is managed. It's not like since Delta Lake is not providing, we don't do that. We manage it via Spark. A closing thought. Designing table is not just a technical ritual, it's an act of building a discipline into the data. Primary key, as we learned, gives every record an identity, uniqueness rule, and prevent mistake. Foreign key preserve that relation. Together, they ensure that the lifeblood of any organization is reliable. Your insights are reliable, your dashboards are clean, and your AI is behaving good. So this is the importance of creating table, and this was the day 4 for learning database and table creation. Thank you guys for listening to this. Thanks. Please do subscribe.